Welcome to Litbit channel. Today we will see the she tragedy or the sentimental tragedy. The she tragedy or sentimental tragedy is a type of drama that became popular in the early 18th century. It focuses on women as the main characters and emphasizes their emotional depth and struggles. Unlike the heroic tragedy, which highlighted grand heroism, the she tragedy often depicts women suffering due to love, betrayal, or societal pressures. When it began, the she tragedy emerged after the heroic tragedy around the early 70s when people started preferring emotional dramas over the exaggerated heroic stories. It was particularly popular in the first few decades of the 18th century. Let's we see pioneer and their work. The she tragedy was pioneered by playwrights like Nicholas Rowe. Nicholas Rowe's works, The Fair Penitent in 1703, focuses on a woman's emotional struggle after making a bad romantic choice. Jane Shores in 1714 tells the story of Jane Shore, a woman who faced betrayal and loss. John Dryden, his play All for Love in 1678, although not strictly a she tragedy, featured a strong female character as a bridge between heroic tragedy and she tragedy. The next one, several writers continued Rowe's style. Edward Young, The Revenge in 1721, explored themes of love and vengeance. Richard Steele, known for sentimental comedies, Steele also wrote tragedies with emotional depth, aligning with the she tragedy style. Key features of she tragedy. It focuses on women's character. The central characters are usually women and the plot revolves around their emotional struggles and emotional excess. The plays exaggerated emotions like suffering, guilt and love, aiming to make the audience sympathize deeply with the character. Then sentimentality. The tragedies highlight tender emotions, inviting the audience to feel empathy for the suffering female protagonist. Then moral and social themes are the plays often explore the wrongdoings of men, betrayal and social expectations affecting the women's life. Characteristics of she tragedy plays. In female protagonist, the main character is typically a woman dealing with emotional or moral dilemmas. Then, sufferings and redemptions. The female's lead often suffers due to love or betrayal but may experience redemptions or moral reckoning by the play's ends. Then moral lessons are these plays often deliver lessons on love, virtue and the consequence of one's action. In emotional manipulations are the plays use intense emotional movements to draw the audience in creating a sentimental atmosphere. Famous works are The Fair Penitent in 1703 by Nicholas Rowe. This play focuses on a woman's emotional journey after making a tragic mistake in love. Then Jane Shores in 1714 by Nicholas Rowe, another major work depicting the sufferings of Jane Shores, a woman of history faced betrayal and loss. Origin and growth of she tragedy. The she tragedy was a response to the heroic tragedy, which was criticized for being overly dramatic and lacking emotional depth. While heroic tragedy was about exaggerated heroism, she tragedy focused on human emotions and personal stories, particularly of women. It becomes popular because the audience was more interested in realistic emotional tales, especially those exploring love and societal expectation. In conclusion part, the she tragedy marked a shift in 18th century drama. It moved away from grand heroic themes and focused on emotional characteristics driven story. By highlighting the struggles of women, these plays tackled the themes of sufferings, betrayal and redemptions, making them more relatable and sentimental for audience. Playwrights like Nicholas Rowe helped shape this genres which influenced later dramatic works. Let me recall this chapter. What is she tragedy? The she tragedy, also called sentimental tragedy, is a type of drama that focuses on women as the main character highlighting their emotional struggles, sufferings, and sentimental themes. When did the she tragedy begins? The she tragedy began in the early 18th century after the declines of heroic tragedy and the most popular during the 70s. What is the primary focus of the she tragedy? The she tragedy focuses on women protagonists exploring their emotional struggles, often caused by love, betrayal, or societal pressures. Why it is called the she tragedy? It is called the she tragedy because the main character in this place is usually a woman and the plot centers around her emotional experience. What type of emotion is emphasized in the she tragedy? The she tragedy emphasizes excessive sentimentality with intense emotions such as remorse and tragic love. What did the she tragedy replace? The she tragedy replaced the heroic tragedy, which was criticized for being overly dramatic and grand, by focusing on personal emotional themes. What are some features of the she tragedy? Features includes a focus on women characters, emotional excess, sentimentality, and moral themes like love, betrayal, and social expectation. What is considered the pioneer of the she tragedy? Nicholas Rao is considered the pioneer of the she tragedy, and his works are seen as prime examples of the genre. What are two notable works by Nicholas? Two notable works by Nicholas Rao and The Fair Penitent in 1703 and Jane Shore in 1714. How does John Dryden's All for Love relate to the she tragedy? Dryden's All for Love blends elements of heroic tragedy and she tragedy with a strong female character, Cleopatra, and emotional themes. What is the central theme of The Fair Penitent? The central theme of The Fair Penitent is a woman's emotional struggle, guilt, and suffering after making a poor romantic decision. What historical figures is the play Jane Shore based on? Jane Shore is based on the real life figure Jane Shore, who experienced betrayal and loss in her life. What does the term sentimental refers to the she tragedy? Sentimental refers to the exaggerated focus on tender emotions like love, guilt, and remorse, which are central to this place, like love, guilt, and remorse, which are central to this place. What is the role of suffering in she tragedy? Suffering is a key theme in she tragedy, as the female protagonist typically ensures emotional pain caused by love, betrayal, social injustice. How does she tragedy typically end? She tragedies often end with the female lead suffering tragically, followed by some form of a redemption or moral reckoning. How does the she tragedy differ from the heroic tragedy? The she tragedy is more emotional and personal, focusing on women's struggle, while the heroic tragedy emphasizes exaggerated heroes' action and grand deeds. Which playwright is known for writing emotional tragedies that focus on love and vengeance? Edward Young, the works like The Revenge in 1721, is known for writing emotional tragedies focusing on themes like love and vengeance. What moral themes are explored in she tragedy? Common moral themes including the consequence of love, betrayal, virtue, redemptions, and societal expectation, especially regarding women's. How does emotional manipulation function in she tragedy? Emotional manipulation is used to draw the audience into deep emotional response, often through distress, remorse, and mourning in the character. What social issues are explored in she tragedy? Social issues in she tragedy includes the wrongdoings of men, betrayals, retributions, and how these issues affect the emotions and lives of women. The followers of Nicholas Rowe in writing she tragedy. Playwrights like Edward Young and Richard Steele followed Rowe and helped develop the she tragedy genre. Why did the she tragedy become popular in the 18th century? The she tragedy became popular because it focused on emotional depth and personal suffering, which matched the changed taste of the time. What is the significance of moral lesson in she tragedy? Moral lessons in she tragedy teach the audience about the consequence of actions, especially related to love, virtue, and emotional decision. How does the she tragedy reflect the cultural shift of the 18th century? The she tragedy reflects the cultural shift towards a more emotional and personal storytelling, focusing on women's role and emotional experiences. Thank you, viewers. Thanks for watching this.